Currently leading the world's most valuable football club and defending last year's league title, this manager's tactics perfected the art of overlapping runs to deliver lethal blows from both flanks, while giving room for his elite midfielders to pull off sensational dribbles and long-range efforts. In this episode, I'll break down the tactics of this legendary player turned manager who holds the joint record for most Champions League titles, which I also won on Superstar using these tactics with full manual controls. This is Zinedine Zidane's Tactical Realism Review. Like Jurgen Klopp, Zizou favors an even more rapid transition of play forward, where your players can be seen bursting forward upon intercepting the ball. And while we've seen in the first episode how using a front-heavy formation alone can drive counterattacks even though we were using a possession style which allows you to hold onto the ball longer while your players make runs forward en route to goal, this time we're actually going to select a counterattacking style, along with an attacking zone down the sides, and you'll see your players on the radar brushing forward along the flanks once you regain possession of the ball. You should also keep an eye on your players' movement in the box to know where to cross the ball. You'll still be able to counter down the center, which Cruz pulls off here when he sends Rodrigo chasing a piercing manual pass through the defense. The constant forward movement makes it possible to use your momentum to nudge the ball past defenders before finishing it off. The counterattack style also works superbly with full manual controls, which is pretty much the only way to make use of all the space your players will create on the pitch. Look how fast and far Carvajal pushes forward on the radar, and the way Valverde is able to squeeze every ounce of power out of the full power bar thanks to full manual controls. I strongly recommend assigning one of your true second strikers with a counter-target advanced instruction, especially with players on your team like Hazard who can take on defenders one-on-one, and midfielders like Cruz who can find him with a well-placed manual pass that sends him on a run that swiftly punishes most teams committing to an all-out attack. With Hazard always up front as a counter-target, he gets to occupy a defender, which gives Benzema more room to push forward on the counter. Zidane's tactics are often criticized for heavily relying on attempts to cross the ball into the box. But can you really blame him with aerial giants like Benzema, Bale and Ronaldo on his team during most of his tenure as manager? And even though Ronaldo and Bale fly for different teams now, Benzema alone is just so damn good in the air that it's still worth keeping these tactics around in PES with his ability to find the net even with his back to it. And when you're on manual shooting, you'll need these good heading stats to make the most out of those crosses. It's not only about direct headers. Benzema's aerial superiority translates into more long balls laid down into the paths of the second strikers around him, which leads to more goals. I don't talk much about defensive tactics because those should be something you tailor for each opposition, but some frontline pressure certainly pairs well with Benzema's ability to lay down those forward punts to be scooped up by your second strikers. Now, along with a side zone attack, there are two instructions to set up your team for effective crossing into the box: centering targets and attacking fullbacks bombing down both sides to keep trying to deliver the ball into the box. In this example, you can see attacking fullbacks Mendy and Nacho bursting forward to support the attack, while Isco and Benzema move into threatening positions in front of the goal. With centering targets, your players will start moving into these positions whenever you have an opportunity to cross, without the crosser needing to be all the way down the flank. In this example, Carvajal crosses from the middle of PSG's half. I love here how Benzema waits for the attacking fullback to arrive and pokes the ball over a little too imperfectly, which I love about FUMA, then uses the extra time to get into position for the cross. Headers, by the way, are not overpowered, and even Benzema will shank one every now and then. Combining the long pass tactic, a wide zone attack, with attacking fullbacks in a flexible formation offers plenty of overlapping options down these corridors, as your players tend to move closer to these attacking fullbacks, offering passing options they can run around. Typically, one of your midfielders will hold the ball while your attacking fullback goes for the overlap around him. In this example, Asensio drifts to the side and waits for Carvajal's overlapping run. He attempts a cross to Benzema, only for Marcelo, the other side's attacking fullback, to pick it up and get it right on a second attempt. And even if a defender sees the overlap coming, it's often too late with a fullback already at full tilt and impossible to catch. Because of how quickly your attacking fullback's stamina will drain, this tactic demands plenty of depth on the bench to maintain this bombardment along the lines into the latter parts of the match. Disabling the attacking fullback instruction keeps them grounded in the back. They will still move towards any manual pass, and you can use an L1 pass to keep them moving forward even further, although you'll have better luck attacking down the center. And just because you've selected a side zone attack, doesn't mean that's exclusively where your players will move. In this counter-attack driven by the midfield triangle, look how Isco, my right second striker, actually drops into this pocket down the center before taking a shot. Speaking of midfield, while the front three have changed over the past 3 years, Zidane's tactics have always revolved around an all too famous triangle driving play. This triangle was formed of three of either Casemiro, Kroos, or Modric as first options, or Valverde and Isco in several games over the past 2 years, with at least 3 players up front in almost all his formations. Scrolling through Zidane's formations over the past year on the OneFootball app, he achieves this using either a 4-3-3 on most games, or a more offensive 4-2-4 with one of the front four as a second striker, typically Isco, placed just barely ahead of what would be considered an attacking midfielder. I've switched between both those formations depending on how aggressively I want to push forward, with 4 players up front easily taking on most defenses. Here's another example of a Frank 4 player counterattack, and you can see how overwhelming it quickly gets with all players rushing forward into space. In here we can see all our attacking instructions coming together. Carvajal regains possession, and immediately you see attacking midfielder Kroos rushing forward into space, followed by Vinicius, who drifts to the side attack zone, then Kroos follows the centering target's instruction to receive the cross from the attacking fullback. These midfielder role assignments are actually quite important, as it's typically the defensive midfielder who receives the ball from defense, then moves it onto the attacking midfielder, who in turn delivers it to the frontline striker, who drills it into the net. You can move more players forward by double tapping the direction pad upwards for a more aggressive offense. I want you to keep your eyes on Kroos, one of my attacking midfielders that day, as this little change makes him push forward a whole lot deeper into a goal-scoring position. You can see it again here, with a clear difference between the way my defensive midfielder that day will lay back a little during an attack, while Modric, my attacking midfielder, bursts into the penalty box to provide a passing option to Hazard. Now if you double tap the direction pad upwards again, an all-red attack will bring the defenders you've pre-selected forward to join your attack in a final push to equalize, useful in the last few minutes of a game. I was actually able to completely overturn scores in the last 5 minutes of simulated time with an all-red attack. You can see Ramos with the assist to Hazard here, who equalizes. Then the very next minute you can see him again pushing forward to pressure defense and complete this all-red remontada. Back to the midfield, a huge advantage of selecting Kroos, Modric, and Casemiro for Zidane's triangle is just how good their shooting stats are. You see, all 3 of them have the rising shot trait, which gets triggered automatically on full manual shooting. It could be difficult to control the ball's elevation, but I found that the best way to do that is to take your shot at a ball moving towards you away from the goal. This is why I prefer the forward-facing version of Zidane's midfield triangle, where you have 2 players available to lay off the ball to. But even your player at the tip of the triangle will sit back, waiting for a layoff to pounce onto. This layoff technique works even for players without the rising shot trait, like Isco. Just be sure to time the shot so you take it with your player's dominant foot. With tactics that rely heavily on crossing the ball into the penalty box, you'll get plenty of opportunities to go for a shot with rebounds from all these crosses. plenty enough to eventually get your aim right. If you're already on the ball, Zidane's peripheral formation gives plenty of room down the center to push the ball forward with a double tap, which allows for a more even long-range effort. Now of course, the further you are, the harder it is to get this aim right on full manual. This is not a complaint, as it's quite realistic, as are the looping ball physics if you catch the ball on the drop. Despite a whole year of trying, long-range manual finesse shots remain to be the most difficult goals to score, even on your dominant foot with good shooting stats. That said, I did finally score my first and only manual long-range finesse with Toni Kroos during the successful Champions League run with Madrid. An unintentional byproduct of this constant shooting bombardment will not only be the favorable deflections into the goal, which will happen more than you'll expect, but many of them get deflected around the goal, leading to more corners being awarded, and I've already made a video about my preferred way to take corners. It won't be a guaranteed goal, but it's dramatically improved my chances of scoring from them on full manual, so do check it out. I must say that using Zidane's real-life tactics was easily the most fun I've had with PES this year, and despite the similarities between both teams, do check out Jurgen Klopp's Tactical Realism episode, where the possession style combined with a false number 9 tactic and the central attack zone creates an entirely different dynamic between your players in the final third. With Madrid, most of your penetration will happen from the sides, as you try to drill the ball into the net using one long-range effort after the other, trying to make the best out of the midfielders on your team with excellent shooting stats, which eventually leads to way more corner kicks and a whole lot of crossing, driven by your striker's aerial superiority as he towers over most defenses. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.